Well, I couldn't be more excited for this edition of Phil's Morning Drive. Today, we're behind the wheel in the 2015 Maserati Ghibli S Q4. It is the most affordable Maserati. This particular one, being the S Q4, has the bigger engine, which is a 404 horsepower twin-turbo V6. The Q4 means that it has Maserati's all-wheel drive system as well. So I am very excited to share this car with you. It is a car that has been something that I have really kind of been a little bit obsessed with, to be honest with you, borderline, since the Super Bowl ad that they came out with when this car came out for 2014. But there's a few cons as well. This is a car that is in a unique spot in the marketplace. There's just a few things about it, and we're going to get into those in this episode, about things that are just, well, that they're probably a deal breaker for a lot of people, honestly. This is really not a car for the guy who is used to driving a BMW 5 Series or a Mercedes E-Class. Typically, those cars don't have a lot of quirks and things about them, but this car definitely does, and so that's what we're going to be talking about today. Now, the first thing that you'll notice about this car is its styling. It has this very sleek and sexy body to it, even for a four-door sedan. I think that's what makes this car unique and also very interesting to look at and to just be out and about in, because as you look at the styling, it's a little bit subtle, but it's also, you can tell that it's something special. And so that's really what I like about this. I also really, really, really like the exhaust note. Let me fire this thing up for you here. You'll hear kind of a low rumble in the background as you start things up. Because this car has so much horsepower, that's pretty exciting. It's really not as much horsepower as some other cars in this comparison, if you will. You can definitely get the BMW and the Mercedes that I mentioned earlier, Audi, certainly a Porsche Panamera, with more horsepower than this for a similar price. But does it have the distinct feel that a Maserati has? You have these nice, beautiful metal paddle shifters here that are in the right place. They're on the steering column like they're supposed to be. You have upshifts on your right, you have downshifts on your left. And so this is a really nice place to be, and you can kind of, I'm going to turn the air conditioner down a little bit here, but you can kind of hear this low rumble. You give it a little bit of gas, and you can tell that even though this car's not a V8, a lot of people that I've shown this car to or let ride in it or drive it think, well, this is a V8, or they think every Maserati is a V8. But, you know, because of emissions and because of standards with fuel economy and those kind of things, the turbo or the twin turbo engines are becoming so much more popular. And so it doesn't matter that this car is not a V8 to me, honestly. You can get a V8, but not in the Ghibli. So you'd have to go with a Quattroporte, which is a longer wheelbase and a bigger sedan than this, in order to get a V8. This, the 404 horsepower twin-turbo V6, is the biggest engine that you can get in a Ghibli. So you heard that exhaust, and it sounds nice. Let me press a little button here, the sport button. Now listen for this. So this has quad exhaust, which is basically there's exhaust on both sides with 4 tips total. When you push the sport button, not only does it sharpen the throttle response and get the car ready for sporty driving, it also opens flaps in the exhaust to allow you to make a little bit more noise. So let me rev it again for you. The sound of this car is really hard to describe, especially in this price range, under $100,000. To get something that has such an Italian sound to it, I mean, this car is very much I would say this is about as close as you can get to a Ferrari sound for this amount of money. I mean, this is less than half, by a long shot, the price of the cheapest Ferrari that you can get, or the most affordable Ferrari, the Ferrari California T. The exhaust note and the power and the way the car feels overall is really the reason that you buy a sedan like this. And because you want something that's in a unique category. You know, there's a lot of E-Class Mercedes, BMW 5 Series, Audi A6, cars in this same size wheelbase that are sporty, that have more power, but they don't sound like this. They don't feel like this. They don't have these kind of materials. there's just some Italian flair that you really just can't put your finger on. And I don't want to sit here and use a lot of words like passion and all the kind of stuff that you typically hear when people talk about Italian cars. But this definitely has a feel that you won't get anywhere else. And that's a really good thing. However, it's also a really bad thing, and I'll tell you why. This car doesn't have a lot of features, even as much as this car costs. You're looking at a car that costs between about $75,000 and $100,000, depending on the options that you choose. And so it doesn't have things like blind spot monitoring. It doesn't have the adaptive cruise control. This navigation system is a Garmin system that is actually borrowed from other products in Chrysler, which is a big complaint for a lot of people. And so it doesn't have a ton of features. You really, I mean, you can get air-conditioned seats and some of those things, or a heated steering wheel. This particular one doesn't have it. And so you're probably thinking, well, where is all this cost coming from? Well, the majority of the options in this car and the money for those options comes from just the way that you equip it for pure style's sake. It's not about gadgets. It's not about that kind of stuff. It's about style. So for example, the suede headliner in here, the Alcantara headliner, suede look, I should say, that's a $1,500 option. This carbon fiber trim down here, that's a $1,500 option. If you want to get these paddles, they're not standard. You have to choose a sport package to make that happen. You can choose a wood steering wheel. You can choose a carbon fiber steering wheel on the newer versions of this car. This has a leather dash, and you're seeing this red stitching everywhere. So all of those things cost extra. These different interior combinations, and you're really not necessarily going to get the money back from that stuff as far as the resale value. The resale value on this car is really not that great. It has lost quite a bit of value in just a couple of years. And there's various reasons for that. I mean, this is not something that is for everybody. That's the main thing I can tell you about this car. But you have this beautiful analog clock up here on the dash. The leather dash is beautiful. The sound of the car is great. You know, I'll tell you something else. The sound system in this car is not that great. I think if you upgraded to the Bowers & Wilkins sound system, but again, you're talking about like $4,000 to $5,000 for that option. This is the second tier sound system. And 2015, by the way, this being a pre-owned vehicle now, this is the last year that the second tier system was really just not that good. You can get a Harman Kardon system now if you're looking at a newer Ghibli, and they're changing things up for the 2018 model year as well. But if you're looking at one of these now, because the prices have come down so much, that's something to keep in mind. You really want to look for one for the Bowers & Wilkins sound system if you're absolutely obsessed with having a great sound system. To be honest with you, as much as I've driven this car, I like to listen to the exhaust. This car has a sound that it's a special occasion to get to drive it. It's a special occasion to get to hear that sound. The whole Maserati name, the panache of all of that, really is part of what makes the car special. But if you're buying this car because you think it's going to hold its value well, it's not. If you're buying this car because you want all of the latest tech, get a Mercedes or a BMW. This car is about driving, the pleasure of driving, the pure sound of this, and everything in between. That's really what the Maserati Ghibli is about. So enough talking. Let's do some driving. Let me get my seatbelt on here, and we will back the car up. I'm leaving it in sport mode. We'll put it in reverse here and see if we can get it out on the road and see how much that you can hear a little bit of that exhaust. A lot of folks have talked about the fact that this has an all-wheel drive system, that this Q4 system is very well done, and it does give you lots of confidence for sporty driving, and it's pretty good in the snow as well. The only issue that you really have with driving in the snow or in bad weather is that as you option up the wheels to the bigger sizes, it's very likely that the option for all-season tires on those rims, at least from the factory, is not going to be there. So if you're trying to balance that out, the smaller wheels that you get will have more of a chance that you'll be able to find one with all-season tires on it, because the wheels on this car are the 20-inch wheels, and you can go bigger than that. I think you can go all the way up to 22s on this car, but the 20-inch wheels, they come with a summer tire, and they don't really make an all-season tire for it, at least in this size. The car wants to keep the RPMs up whenever you have it in sport mode, so that the car is at the ready. So like, if I lay into it here a little bit, you'll hear the nice bark. Oh my gosh. The sound of this car is just, I think that if you decide to buy a car like this, or you want to go for a test drive in this, I would recommend that the first thing you do, before you even put it in drive, is to push the sport mode button, and to do the manual mode too. I mean, these paddle shifters, they respond very, very well. They have such an awesome feel to them. They're on the steering column, so they're not on the wheel, so as the wheel moves, they don't move. They just have such a great feel to them. It's really nice too when the air conditioner is blowing on the pedals and they're kind of cold to the touch, especially in the summertime. I don't know, there's just something about that. And they are metal, they're not plastic. And so you just get, it's just such a sense of theater and a sense of occasion driving this car. You can really, as you start to lay into the accelerator, you can really adjust the throttle input and the paddle shifters to really make the most of the sound of the exhaust. So as long as it's in sport mode and in manual mode, it sounds great. Even if we downshift here a little bit, it just, oh my gosh, I can't say enough good things about how awesome that this car sounds. And here's something else that's really great about the sound of it. Not only is it rich and full and has these pops and crackles and all these great sounds to it, the fact that you can close those flaps, if you're going into a neighborhood or you're going into an area where maybe you don't want to make a ton of noise, take it out of manual mode, take it out of sport mode, and it drives pretty much like a regular car. There's a little bit of a rumble back there, but it's really more for you, the driver, or folks that happen to be walking close to you. It's not going to be a situation that's going to wake everybody up, unless you're doing a cold start. I'd let it warm up in the garage or maybe in the driveway just a little bit before you pull it out, because a cold start is pretty loud. And if you put it in sport mode with a cold start, oh, it's absolutely deafening. Let's talk about some of the cons on this car. Obviously, the fact that they lose value very, very quickly is a pretty big con, especially if you're looking at buying a new one. And I would definitely recommend that you do not, under any circumstance, pay sticker for this. I mean, most of these cars get discounted pretty heavily, especially towards the end of the year. Some other things to think about on the cons list. I mean, the fact that this doesn't have a lot of technology in it. I mean, it's taken them a while to really get some of the stuff that you're seeing on cars that only cost about $25,000 or $30,000, like blind spot monitoring and some of that stuff. They're starting to add more and more of those features on newer models, but if you're looking for one of these used ones that's a little bit older, you're just not going to have that. So this is not a car for somebody who wants the very latest and greatest in tech. Because it just isn't there. The gas mileage on this car is not that great either, even though they're using a V6. I'm thinking you're probably going to average somewhere around 15 miles per gallon in town. You can probably push it up close to 22 or 23 on the highway, depending on whether or not you have it in sport mode or not. If you leave it out of sport mode and you're going down the highway, it's really a little bit more pleasant because you don't have the drone from the exhaust with that. When it comes to purchasing a Maserati Ghibli, you have to be the kind of person who really likes a car because of its style. It makes you feel special every time you drive it. That feeling of occasion that is brought on by not just the styling, but the sounds and the materials. It really is a feast for all 5 of your senses. Even after 2 years, the new car smell and the smell of leather is alive and well. Fire it up, and you'll find yourself behind the wheel of what I consider to be one of the top 5 most exciting sedans on the market today. Yes, it has plenty of things to dislike compared to its competition, but focusing on those things will miss the point entirely. It's great to have loads of tech in a car, but when it comes to the feeling and experience, it's hard to argue with the Ghibli. A new one might be out of your price range, but picking up a 2015 model for under $55,000 just might be the answer to the question, how can I get a car with 4 doors and lots of excitement? The answer, even with all of its faults, is the Maserati Ghibli SQ4. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to check out our website, itsphilsmorningdrive.com.